He shouted it like a stranger. "Give my wife your room or get out, Mom!" The echo filled the hallway, the same hallway where he learned to walk, dragging his little blue blanket behind him. I didn't answer. I just stood by the doorway, holding the mug that had gone cold in my hands. The morning light touched the edges of the photo frames, his graduation picture, the one I bought the suit for when his father refused to. Now he stood taller, shoulders tight with anger. His wife behind him, eyes lowered, pretending not to hear what she had clearly rehearsed. They had been staying for a few weeks. It had been 7 months. I gave them my kitchen, my quiet, my savings. I told myself it was temporary. Love always needs time to settle. But love, when it doesn't respect the walls it lives in, becomes invasion. He wanted my room because it had the morning light, the only room that didn't leak when it rained. I slept there with my late husband for 28 years. When he died, I changed only the curtains. Not the smell of cedar, not the drawer where he kept the letters. Now, my son wanted that light for his wife. He said the small room wasn't good enough for her. And I thought, what did he think was good enough for me? I looked at him, really looked. His jaw trembled. He couldn't meet my eyes. Somewhere under that anger was the boy who used to whisper, "Don't cry, Mama. I'll take care of you when I'm big." Maybe this was his version of taking care, giving orders, confusing comfort with control. I placed the mug on the counter. The sound was soft, but it cut the air like a verdict. "You can have the room," I said quietly. His wife smiled, a small, triumphant smile. "But I'll be leaving with something too." He frowned. "What?" I walked to the dresser and opened the bottom drawer, the one with my husband's old papers, folded and yellowed with time. Inside was a small blue folder. The deed. I looked at it for a long time before speaking. "Before you move into that room," I said, "you should know who built this house and who still owns it." He stared at me, confused. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. At my age, I don't shout. I keep receipts. And that morning, under that same gentle light, I decided, if he was going to learn what a home truly meant, he would learn it not from comfort, but from consequence. Subscribe to our channel. This helps our work reach more people. That afternoon, I ironed pillowcases in the room they wanted, pressing the cotton like I was smoothing down my own heartbeat. The window threw a rectangle of gold across the bedspread. Dust floated in it like small truths that refused to settle. My son finally said the words he'd been chewing on. 2 weeks, Mom," Daniel announced from the doorway, hands in the pockets of the jacket I gave him at 25. "By the 15th, we're moving into this room. It'll be better for Lena and the baby when we try." The date landed. 15th, a deadline for respect. Lena appeared behind him, soft perfume and a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. "It's just more practical," she said, with the voice of someone who thinks kindness is furniture you can rearrange. I nodded like a quiet clock. Tick. 2 weeks. I set the iron upright and let it hiss. "Practical," I said, "is a word men use when they want comfort to come cheap." Daniel's jaw worked. "Mom, please, we're not asking. We're telling you how it's going to be." There it was. The rule. He was 32. He'd learned to argue in college debate club and to forget tenderness in the years after. His father died in 2008. Grief taught us different languages. Mine was silence. His was command. I reached into the nightstand where I keep the blue folder and slid out a single page. The property tax statement for this year, stamped paid in thick red ink. Amount due, 1,184.36 sogs. Due date, March 31st. My handwriting at the bottom, paid from savings, M. I held it between 2 fingers like a modest flag. "Practical is paying what keeps the roof honest," I said. "This paper doesn't shout, it just proves." He glanced, then looked away fast, like paper could burn. "We'll pay more when I get that promotion," he said, already defensive. We need a little more space." I remembered a winter from his childhood when space meant space between paychecks. I used to cut coupons until my thumbs ached, and he would sit at the table and arrange them like playing cards. "I'll take care of you when I'm big," he'd whisper, scotch taping the smallest savings to the fridge like medals. If promises had interest, I'd be rich. I folded the sheet and returned it to the folder. Then I set my own clock. 2 weeks is fine, I said. By the 15th, we'll have a different understanding of this house. He frowned. Meaning? I smiled the way a locked drawer smiles. Meaning, I'll do what's practical. The next days, I moved softly, but not idly. I measured the leak in the back bedroom after the rain. 1 bowl fills in 8 hours. The ceiling stains map a faded continent. I photographed everything. The crack above the door, the scuffed baseboard from their luggage, the dent in the hallway where a suitcase kissed the wall too hard. I printed each photo with the date beneath it. Paper doesn't accuse. It observes. On the 9th, the mail brought a thin envelope addressed to me and to someone whose name used to hurt. Harriet Louise Morgan, mine, and Thomas Morgan, my late husband. Inside, an old credit union letter about the final mortgage payment dated June 12, 2001. I had asked them for a copy. I slid it into the folder behind the deed. That paper felt like a hand on my back. On the 12th, Lena placed a scented candle on my dresser, uninvited. For when we move in, she chirped. Vanilla sugar. I blew it out with one gentle breath. On the 14th at dinner, Daniel tapped the table like a gavel. Tomorrow, he said, we swap rooms. I've arranged movers for the heavy things. He said movers like mercy. I wiped the rim of my glass and met his eyes. And I said, have arranged something too. He paused. What did you arrange, Mom? I folded my napkin once, twice, the way I fold truth when it isn't ready to be served. You'll see it in the morning, I said softly. When the house speaks for itself, I barely slept on the 14th. The house breathed like a tired animal, the radiator clicking its old bones, the fridge humming the same low hymn it sang through our leanest winters. I lay on the edge of the bed they wanted, counting the seconds between the streetlight flicker and the shadow passing my curtains. When sleep finally came, it brought me back to 2008, to the hardest room I ever stood in. Hospital green. Thomas's breath a shore breaking softer each hour. Daniel was 20 then, all elbows and ambition, promising the nurse, I'll stay the night with my mom. He left at 11 for a study group that had laughter in it. I could hear it on the phone when he called to say he wouldn't come back. Don't be dramatic, Mom. You've got the nurses. Dramatic. I remember the word the way a scar remembers heat. The next morning, his father died before sunrise. I signed papers with a hand that would not stop shaking. Daniel arrived with a coffee and a sorry that didn't know where to sit. I told him to go wash his face in the family restroom. He never saw me fold in on myself in the stairwell. Back then, I learned this. My grief could not ask for help. It had to stack itself neatly like towels. Years later, when he married Lena, he said, I'll take care of you once we're settled. Settled kept moving like a suitcase that never quite closes. By midnight, I rose and went to the dresser. The bottom drawer slid open with that cedar sigh Thomas loved. I set the blue folder on the bed and sifted through tax receipts, the deed, the credit union letter from June 12, 2001, confirming the mortgage was done. Paper is loyal. It repeats the same truth every time you touch it. Behind the deed, something stiff against the lining, a cream envelope I'd forgotten. My husband's slanted letters across the front. For Danny, when you're big enough to keep the house kind. No stamp, no tear, the seal still whole. Was I waiting for a better son or a braver mother? My hands did not tremble as much as they used to. I turned the envelope in the lamplight. It had the faintest grease mark in one corner, Thomas's thumbprint maybe, from the garage after changing the oil. He always came in with that smell, metal and soap. He used to say, a home is what you repair, not what you claim. I thought of Daniel's deadline, the 15th, and of Lena placing that vanilla candle on my dresser like a flag. I thought of all the words that had been poured in this house, and how few of them were apologies. I slipped a nail under the flap, then stopped. Not yet. Let the morning hold the first truth. Let the house speak first in daylight. I placed the envelope on the blue folder, straightened both as if they were guests, and then I did something small and unforgivable. I took my oldest key ring from the hook by the back door and removed one brass key, the basement lockbox. I held its weight in my palm until it warmed. At my age, I don't shout. I curate. I laid the envelope on the kitchen table where the sun would find it. And as the clock turned past 2, I told the quiet room, "Tomorrow, you will teach my son what a home is." The house answered with a soft pipe knock, like a knuckle on wood. By dawn, the seal finally broke. Morning gold climbed the wall like a slow promise. I sat at the kitchen table with the opened envelope beside my coffee and the brass key on top of it like a punctuation mark. The paper smelled faintly of machine oil and cedar. Thomas's handwriting leaned right, eager, as if his words were walking to Daniel with open arms. "Danny," it began. He always used the boy's name like a blessing. "If I'm gone and you're reading this, remember, the deed is wood and ink. Your mother is the house." He wrote of small things that hold a place together. Gutters cleaned before rain, shoes left by the door, bills paid without applause. If you need more space, build shelves, not demands. Taped inside the letter was a pale photo. Daniel at 10, standing on a ladder, holding a paint roller with both hands, while Thomas steadied the rung. In the corner of the image, my hand, blurred, offering a damp cloth. On the back, in blue pen, house rules. 1. Speak gentle. 2. Put it back. 3. Say thank you. 4. Take care of Mom when I can't. I breathed once, deep, and let the rules settle in my chest like nails bite wood. I used the brass key on the basement lockbox. The old metal tongue clicked open with a memory-sweet sound. Inside, wrapped in a towel, I found what I'd almost forgotten. A spiral notebook with Thomas's sketches of shelves we never built, a maintenance log, and a tidy stack of our original house rules copied in Daniel's 10-year-old handwriting. I brought them upstairs like bread warm from the oven. By 8, I'd set the kitchen like a small courtroom. Letter, photo, notebook, tax statement, deed, each in its place, each labeled with a sticky note and a date. Beside them, 3 keys on the table: front door, back door, garage. The 4th, the basement, stayed in my apron pocket. I printed 2 copies of a simple agreement I typed at midnight. Use and respect agreement. 3 pages, 3 clauses. Contribution, care, and courtesy. No punishments, only consequences. Miss contribution for 30 days. You lose shared privileges. Violate care, you repair or replace. Break courtesy, you move out or we revisit in writing. At 9, a van idled outside. Movers. Daniel came in with confidence borrowed from other men, the kind you can return after the weekend. Lena trailed, phone in hand, eyes roaming the room that did not belong to her mouth. "Good morning," I said. "Before anyone touches a box, the house has something to say." He exhaled, already annoyed. "Mom," I slid the letter forward. "From your father." His face changed like a cloud moving across his own weather. He reached for the paper as if it might bite. He read the first line aloud, then went silent. Lena glanced at me, then at him, then at the photo. The boy on the ladder stared back at the man who had forgotten him. I didn't push. I poured coffee and let the words work, the way yeast lifts dough in its own time. When he finished, I placed the 3-page agreement beside his hand. "What's this?" he asked, voice smaller. "Shelves," I said, instead of demands. He skimmed the clauses, eyes catching on numbers. $350 monthly toward utilities and taxes. Alternate Saturdays for deep cleaning common spaces. No entry to my bedroom or dresser without permission. 90 days maximum stay, unless renegotiated. "Mom," he started, bristling. "We're family." "Exactly," I said. "A home is how family behaves." He looked from the letter to the keys. "Why are there only 3? I let the question hang like a picture not yet straightened. "The 4th, I said, touching my apron pocket, "is for whoever remembers Rule 4. He turned the photo over. He read the rule. And for the first time in months, Daniel swallowed hard and said nothing. At 9:10, the movers leaned on the hood of their van, sipping gas station coffee and checking their watches. Their T-shirts had the company name in flaking red, Quick Lift. The foreman, a patient man with shoulders like a wardrobe, spoke gently. "Ma'am, Our rate is $85 an hour once we're on site. Time is money. I have learned to count both. Daniel stood behind my chair, drumming 2 fingers on the use and respect agreement. This is overkill, he said. We're family, not tenants. Family is exactly why it's on paper, I answered. Paper keeps love from turning into memory loss. He pushed the pages back to me. I'm not signing a contract to live in my mother's house. I slid a small printed ledger across the table, a single page, 3 neat columns, date, expense, source, 7 months of lines, groceries, $421.19, my card, gas bill, $128.54, paid by me, power, $213.90, due on the 20th, scheduled, my checking. Not a single deposit from Daniel or Lena. At the bottom, my quiet math, total contribution from guests, 0.00. I didn't circle it. I didn't need to. Lena flushed. We buy our own food, she murmured. I pointed to the pantry list, clipped with a magnet to the fridge, Lena's handwriting in lavender pen. Almond milk, imported coffee, vanilla pods. I don't drink imported anything, I said. But I paid the receipt when the card reader failed. $63.47. Your thank you is still in transit. Daniel's voice got flat, the way voices do when pride stands in the doorway. We'll pay you back when my promotion hits. Then sign for the timeline and the amount you intend, I said, tapping clause 1, $350 due on the 1st, utilities on rotation. Promises without dates are lullabies. He glanced at the window at the van idling. They're waiting. I nodded and called the foreman to the step. Sir, until we have signatures, nothing moves. I'll cover your $40 call-out and you can be on your way. He looked between us, understanding the shape of the weather, and handed me a receipt. Paper has a way of choosing sides without sentiment. Lena's phone vibrated. She typed furiously and then announced, My mother says you're being cruel. She said the word like she'd never met rent in a dark alley. Your mother lives in a house someone paid for, I said, soft as steam. She should know what that costs. Daniel's shoulders rose, then fell. Fine, he snapped. We'll get our own place in 30 days. He shoved the agreement back toward me. If you won't be generous, we'll be gone, and you can keep your perfect room and your little folder. I folded the agreement once, then again. 30 days, I repeated, setting the clock he thought he'd started. On the 15th of next month, this arrangement ends unless a signature finds its courage. He grabbed his jacket and left to go to the bank. Lena followed, vanilla moving through the air like a polite ghost. The van rumbled away. Alone, I placed the foreman's receipt in my blue folder behind the tax statement. I wrote the time in the margin, 10:37 a.m. Then I made tea and watched the empty driveway reclaim its quiet. At noon, a message from Daniel flashed on my phone. Dinner on Sunday? We should talk like adults. I replied with a single word, practical. I set 3 plates on the hutch for Sunday and placed the 4th key back in my apron pocket. The house held its breath the way a stage does when the curtain starts to rise. And because numbers are prayers that balance themselves, I printed 1 more page. Power Company. Disconnect notice template. Blank for now. I slid it under the ledger and waited for the doorbell that would ring with flowers and conditions. He came on Sunday at 5 with a grocery bag and a bouquet that still had the price sticker, $9.99. He kissed my cheek like a signature he wasn't sure of and set the bag on the counter. I brought salmon, he said, proud, like generosity came marinated. Lena followed with a casserole dish and a smile unscathed by doubt. We want to reset, she said, emphasizing we as if it were furniture they could push into my room. We cooked in a choreography we hadn't shared in years. He chopped parsley. I salted the water. She hovered, tasting for a future that needed more butter. The house grew warm and forgiving, the way kitchens do when apologies try on their coats. At dinner, the conversation walked carefully. Daniel cleared his throat. I read Dad's letter again, he began, fingers tracing the grain of the table Thomas sanded smooth the year we almost left each other, and didn't. I was out of line. I'm sorry, I shouted. Apologies, like knives, can be sharp or ceremonial. I waited. He took the agreement from his jacket pocket, folded, softened at the corners. I'll sign, he said, with one adjustment. There it was, tucked inside the bouquet. I need a full set of keys, he continued. All 4. Emergencies happen, and if we're paying, we should have access. Also, I think we should add me to the utility accounts. Maybe, someday, to the deed. We can call it a path to co-ownership. Lena sipped water, eyes down, as if the word deed were a bright light. I placed my fork gently on my plate. The path to co-ownership, I said, is paved with contributions and years, not dinners. I reached for the agreement, circled contribution and care with my thumb, and slid it back. You'll have 3 keys. The 4th belongs to the one who remembers Rule 4 without being asked. He nodded, a concession rehearsed. Then I saw it, the way his phone angled toward the blue folder on the sideboard, camera open to the deed's edge peeking from its sleeve. The screen caught the corner of embossed paper like a fish hook. Daniel, I said softly, and his eyes flashed up, guilty as a porch light at 2 a.m. I was just... He locked the phone, color rising. Olive branches don't come with cameras, I said. Put your phone away. He did. We ate in a silence that had flavor. At 7, the doorbell rang. Lena jumped up too quick. Oh, that must be... She stopped herself. A man in a blazer stood on the porch with a leather folio and measuring tape clipped to his belt. Evening, he said brightly. I'm Kyle from Brightstone Realty. Here for the square footage assessment? Daniel's face drained. Lena spoke fast, fingers twisting her napkin. It's not what it sounds like, Harriet. My mom knows someone at this firm. It's just for, insurance. To understand value. Value, I repeated. I offered Kyle a polite smile and a cup of tea he did not accept. May I see your card? He handed it over, white, crisp, embossed. I read it, turned it over, and set it beside my ledger. There won't be any assessment tonight. No one measures a home they don't respect. Kyle cleared his throat, sensing a room he hadn't been paid to walk into. Of course. My apologies. He backed away, relief in reverse, and disappeared into the evening. Daniel rounded on Lena in a hiss. Why did you... She snapped back, whispering sharp. Your mother is impossible. We need to know what we're dealing with. I let their whispers braid themselves into a rope they couldn't pull. Then I stood, collected the plates, and spoke in the tone I reserve for spoons and truths. If you want a life where men with clipboards decide your comfort, be my guest. But not in this house. I took Kyle's card, placed it in the blue folder, and wrote a note on a sticky. Attempted appraisal. 7:02 p.m., Sunday. Paper doesn't hold grudges. It holds records. Daniel's shoulders sagged. We were trying, he said, softer. You were testing, I corrected. There's a difference. He stared at the 3 keys on the hook, then at my apron pocket where the 4th rested. I could see him wanting the shortcut more than the work. I washed the last plate and set it in the rack. If you still intend to sign, I said, not looking up, be here tomorrow at 6 p.m. Bring proof of your first contribution. The house likes receipts. He swallowed, a boy caught between doors. And if we don't? I dried my hands, turned off the kitchen light, and let the dark do what it does, tell the truth without raising its voice. Then, I said, on the 15th next month, you'll learn what leaving feels like. In the quiet that followed, something small but certain clicked in the lock. Not a threat, just the sound of a boundary finding its home. At 5:30, I boiled pasta and set 1 extra plate, hope like small rituals. By 6 p.m., the clock's hands met, like 2 people trying. Daniel was late. By 6:22, the sauce had skinned over and the house stopped pretending. He arrived at 6:31 with Lena, breathless and smiling the way people smile when they've decided not to listen. He didn't sit. He didn't apologize. He set a folded deposit slip on the table like a white flag. I opened it. $50 cash. No signature, no account. A joke with numbers. Proof of good faith, he said quickly. The rest will come when the promotion clears. Good faith, I repeated. Doesn't come in down payments on respect. I slid the slip back, even the paper embarrassed. Lena cleared her throat. We made a start, she said, glancing toward the hallway. While you were out. I felt the change before I saw it. The air shifted, the way a house inhales when its center is disturbed. I walked down the hall. My bedroom door, the one with the morning light, had a new bright doorknob, shiny as arrogance. My old brass knob lay in a plastic bag on the floor. Inside, my dresser had moved 3 inches, my husband's cedar box missing from its usual place, the bedspread smoothed in a hotel way that erases the people who have slept there. My throat did not close. I wrote what my eyes saw. 6:35 p.m. New knob installed without consent. Cedar box displaced. Personal items handled. I took photographs. Paper has a spine. My heart borrowed it. Behind me, Daniel explained, words tumbling. We didn't want to rush you, Mom. We just... Logistics. Movers are cheaper on weekdays. We'll sleep here tonight. You can take the small room. It won't be for long. Until the 15th, Lena added, gentle like poison in tea. I stepped into the small back bedroom. The ceiling stain had widened since last rain, a brown continent expanding. I placed a bowl on the floor and marked the water line with a Sharpie. 1 inch, then 2 by 2 a.m. I found the thin quilt I kept for guests who never stayed and folded it down with steady hands. I did not argue in the corridor. I did not cry in the leaking room. I wrote, inventory, my jewelry box unopened, my letters untouched, the window latch still stiff. Missing, cedar box, the key to the basement lockbox, still in my apron pocket, thank God. Action, photographs, timestamps, calm. At midnight, their laughter seeped under the door, muffled by dry walls that remembered kinder echoes. In the small bed, I turned my face toward the window and listened to the rain begin, the soft, steady talk of a roof doing its best under neglect. The bowl filled on schedule. The drip was a metronome that counted down pride. Around 3 a.m., I rose and walked the hallway barefoot. The house was darker than I knew it could be. I stood at my old door and pressed my palm to the wood. On the other side, my son slept in the light that used to wake my husband's laugh. At my age, I don't pound on doors. I measure them. Back in the small room, I wrote one more line in my ledger. Apparent loss. Accepted without spectacle. Prepare consequence. Then I lay down, and for the first time in this whole slow war, I let the leak say the thing I would not. This hurt. I slept an hour. When I woke, the bowl had reached the line I'd drawn at midnight, and I knew, by evening, something else would too. Morning brought coffee, and a ringing I thought was the kettle. It was the doorbell, the real one, the one Thomas installed himself the year the porch sagged, and he said, "If it calls, it should be heard." I opened the door to Mrs. Alvarez from next door, cardigan against the chill, concern arranged neatly on her face. "Harriet," she said, lowering her voice, "do you have a minute?" Her son had installed one of those smart doorbells last Christmas, the kind that catches kids stealing Amazon boxes and husbands bringing flowers after arguments. "Mrs." Alvarez held up her phone. "We got motion alerts last night," she said. "Men going in and out with boxes around 5:50 p.m. One of them had a toolkit. I thought it was odd. We didn't see your car." I poured her coffee. She swiped, pinched, and there it was in tiny, truthful pixels. Daniel at the top of my porch with a new doorknob in a plastic blister pack. Lena behind him, carrying my pillow as if it were hers. The timestamp sat under their faces, calm as a judge. The man with the toolkit, Kyle from Brightstone Realty, had smooth hands. These were different hands. Neighbor's friend, perhaps, or a cheap locksmith, hard to tell. Frame by frame, they walked my hallway like it had agreed. "May I?" I asked. She nodded. I recorded the clip to a USB she pulled from her bag, just in case. She patted my hand. "If you need me to say what I saw, I will," she said. Thomas once fixed my fence after a storm. He called it neighborly interest. At my table, the house became a little newsroom. I printed stills, Daniel with the knob, Lena with the pillow, the toolkit man kneeling at my door. I wrote the times under each. I added the receipt from QuickLift with 10:37 a.m., an earlier attempt, and Kyle's business card from Brightstone, annotated 7:02 p.m., attempted appraisal. Different days, same hunger. By 10, the bowl in the back room was one rim shy of a complaint. I photographed that too, drip by drip evidence of where I had slept. Evidence is not drama. It is detail. At noon, the mail carrier handed me a certified envelope. Return address, the power company. I expected a bill. Instead, notice of a requested account change, pending verification. Someone had attempted. Have you been through something similar? Tell us your story in the comments below. We read every comment. It's important for us to know we're not alone. To add Daniel as an authorized contact. The letter had today's date. If this was not you, please contact us by 5 p.m. I smiled without humor. Practical, I whispered, and slid it beside the doorbell stills. Resource is rarely loud. Sometimes it arrives wearing a cardigan, holding a USB. Sometimes it wears a postal uniform with sunburn on the neck and says, "Sign here." At 1 p.m. I called the number. "No changes," I said. "Owner remains Harriet Louise Morgan. Note attempted unauthorized ad." The representative typed, clacked, then read back my words slowly. I asked her to email a confirmation. When it arrived, I printed it and placed it on top of the growing stack. The printer hummed like agreement. At 3 p.m., the foreman from QuickLift texted, "Ma'am, just confirming we didn't move anything on Friday. We were released at 10:37 a.m. If you need a statement, I can write one." I replied, "Yes, please." Time plus rate quoted. His statement pinged my inbox. I printed it too. By 4, my table looked like a quilt of quiet truths. In the center, I placed Thomas's letter with the photo of 10-year-old Danny on the ladder. Rule 4 written in blue pen on the back. I turned the photo over so the rule faced up. Take care of Mom when I can't. I washed 2 cups and waited for the sound of my son coming home to a house that, for the first time, would really speak. I didn't plan a scene. I planned a reading. At 5:15, I heard his key in the front door, one of the 3. He stepped into the kitchen, 1 foot already in the story he preferred. Then he saw the table. He tried for a joke and missed. "What is all this, Mom?" "The house's memory," I said. I tapped the still with his hand on my new doorknob. "And our neighbor's doorbell has a better one than yours." He looked at Mrs. Alvarez's name under the USB label. His mouth opened, closed. Pride looked around for a door and found none. Silence sat between us like a witness who does not flinch. I slid the certified letter across to him, then the printed email from the power company. "You've been busy," I said gently. "So have I." He swallowed and reached for the chair, but I didn't invite him to sit. Not yet. "Tonight," I said, "we're going to read." I waited until he sat. The house had gone completely still, as if the walls were waiting for verdicts. "Read," I said, pushing the first page toward him, the one with the photo stills. He looked down, his own image staring back, him with the doorknob, Lena with my pillow, the stranger crouched with a toolkit. Each photo carried its own timestamp like a confession. He blinked fast. "Mom, this looks bad, but—" "Not bad," I interrupted softly. "Just true." He rubbed his temple. "Lena thought we should prepare. We didn't want to surprise you with movers." "Daniel," I said, "you already did." I slid the QuickLift statement across the table, the one signed by the foreman, confirming no work had been done under my authorization. I pointed to the time, 10:37 a.m. Then beside it, I placed the Brightstone card. 2 companies in 3 days, I said. 1 to move my things, 1 to measure their value, not preparation, procurement. He winced. "You're making this sound like evidence?" I asked. "That's because it is." He fell silent. I took the certified envelope from the power company and laid it gently between us. "You tried to add yourself to my accounts," I said, still calm. "That's not ambition, Danny. That's replacement." His face reddened. "I just wanted to help." "Help isn't what you call it when you start by taking." The silence grew teeth. Somewhere in the pipes, a drop fell. The echo from the leaking room, still counting time for us. Finally, I pushed the old photograph forward. Thomas's handwriting on the back, the 4 rules in blue pen. "You remember this?" He stared at it a long time. "Dad made me write those." "Yes," I said. "And you broke 3. He looked up sharply. "Which ones?" "Speak gentle," I began. "Put it back. Take care of Mom when I can't." His hands trembled slightly, palms open, like someone trying to catch falling glass. "I didn't mean to hurt you." "I know," I said. "But meaning is a smaller word than doing." He stared at the ledger, the receipts, the emails, the stills, the quiet architecture of consequence. His voice broke around the edges. "So what happens now?" I stood, folded my apron, and placed it on the table. "Now," I said, "we let the house speak in full." I opened the blue folder, pulled out the deed, and laid it flat in front of him. The paper was soft from years of being touched, but still clear. Owner, Harriet Louise Morgan, and Thomas E. Morgan. Survivorship retained by Harriet L. Morgan. I traced the signature line where Thomas's name lived like an echo. "This isn't punishment," I said quietly. "It's history, and you can't move into history just because it has better light." He swallowed hard. "Tomorrow morning," I continued, "you'll pack the things you moved. The movers will come at 10 a.m., the ones you didn't pay last week. I've already booked them." He stared at me. "You're kicking us out." "No," I said, turning the word gently. "I'm sending you home, wherever you decide to build one." His eyes searched mine for softness. I gave him something better: clarity. At my age, mercy comes with paperwork. Lena appeared in the doorway then, pale, silent, her phone clutched like a small shield. She looked at the table, the photographs, the old letter. Something in her eyes changed. Recognition, maybe fear. She didn't speak. Daniel stood slowly, shoulders sinking. "I'll go upstairs," he said. "We'll be ready in the morning." As he turned, I said one last thing, not to wound, but to finish the lesson. "Danny," I said, "you thought home was something you could demand. But home isn't a room you take. It's the place you're invited back to, if you've learned how to knock." He nodded once, like a boy who finally understood a rule he wrote long ago. Then he walked down the hall, the sound of his footsteps small and human again. I watched him go, and for the first time in months, the house exhaled. Morning arrived clean, unsentimental. The movers came at 9:57, right on time. They nodded to me with quiet respect. They remembered my face from the first attempt. Daniel and Lena were already downstairs, their suitcases zipped, the new silver doorknob wrapped in a towel like something ashamed of itself. He avoided my eyes as they packed. Lena tried small talk, but the air had no appetite for it. Before they left, I took the 3 keys from the hook, front, back, and garage, and laid them on the counter. I held the 4th, the basement key, still warm in my palm. "This one," I said, "isn't for locks. It's for memory." He frowned. "What do you mean?" I opened my hand and showed him the brass, worn smooth from years of use. "Your father kept the house alive down there. Tools, paint, pipes, things that broke and got fixed again. Every repair was a promise. If you ever want to earn your way back here, you start where he did. In the dark, fixing what leaks." He nodded, the smallest movement but honest. Lena pressed her lips together. "We'll find a place," she said softly. "I know you will," I replied. "And maybe one day, when you understand that home isn't ownership but stewardship, you'll visit, not to claim, but to remember." The movers lifted the last box. Daniel turned once more toward me, eyes rimmed with regret. "Mom, I don't deserve the letter Dad wrote." I smiled, weary but kind. "You deserve the chance to live up to it. That's different." They stepped outside. The door closed gently, not slammed, not heavy, just final. I stood there a while, listening to the echo fade into quiet. The sunlight reached the far wall, tracing the edge of the picture where Thomas still smiled in his blue work shirt. Then I did what I had promised myself for weeks. I walked to the back room, the one with the leak, and measured the bowl. Empty. No new water. Overnight the roof had held. I smiled. "Good," I whispered to the house. "You've learned too." I made tea, folded the use and respect agreement, and placed it in the blue folder behind the deed. Not as a contract, but as a relic. Then, on the topmost page, I wrote in careful ink, "Closure complete, lesson delivered, house intact." At my age, I don't shout, I preserve. And as the kettle whistled, I poured 1 cup for myself, and one for the man whose handwriting still steadied the walls. He came back 2 days later at 6:04 p.m. with a cardboard box and the face of someone who'd slept beside his choices. The porch light caught the dust in the air. It looked like the day had been shaken and was settling again. He rang once, then twice, polite now. I opened. "I forgot a few things," he said. His voice had new edges filed down. I stepped aside. "They're on the dining chair," I said. The blue folder sat on the table, closed. The house was quiet the way it is before a storm decides whether it will break. He moved carefully, gathering the sweater he'd left on my couch weeks ago, the battered notebook with college notes that had waited for him longer than his marriage vows did. At the door, he hesitated. "Mom," he began, "can we talk without all the exhibits?" I nodded and led him to the kitchen. No papers between us. Only 2 mugs and the oval of sunlight on the table where his father's hands used to rest. He spoke first, faster than truth, but slower than habit. I told myself I was protecting Lena. She hates the little room. She says the light makes her sad, and I wanted to make it easy. I thought if I handled the accounts, the keys, the appraisal. He flinched at the word. "I thought you'd see I could lead." I let the kettle hum its low approval of honesty. "Leadership without stewardship," I said, "is just noise with a badge." His jaw tightened. "She told me to be decisive. She said you'd never give up that room unless forced. She said—" He stopped. Loyalty tugged his sleeve. "Say what she said," I asked gently. "That you'd be grateful later." He swallowed. "That old people don't like change at first, but they adjust." I breathed in slowly. "I am old enough to know change. Your father left, came back, fought for us, died. I adjusted to all of it. What I won't adjust to is theft with please and thank yous on it." He looked down at his hands. "I know." I slid a small sealed envelope across the table. Not the deed, not the letter. His name on the front, Daniel. "When you're ready." He didn't touch it. "What's this?" "A copy of the use and respect agreement with the numbers handwritten by you," I said. "Blank now. It becomes yours if you choose to earn your way back as a guest for holidays, Sundays, repairs. Not as a claimant, as a son." He flinched, pride trying to stand. Then he let it sit. "I called Brightstone," I added, voice steady. "I told them to remove my address from their prospect list and to train their representatives not to schedule assessments without clear title holder consent. Kyle's supervisor apologized. He wrote a letter. It's filed. And I called the power company. They've flagged my account against unauthorized changes. Quiet fixes for loud mistakes." His eyes filled, then cleared. "I didn't know you did all that." "I didn't perform it," I said. "I processed it." "Mom." He stopped, then tried again. "Lena thinks you humiliated us." I lifted my mug. "If paper humiliates you, it's not the paper." He nodded, slow and sober. "I'm meeting Mrs. Alvarez tomorrow to apologize for the noise. She left a note. She also has a copy of the doorbell footage," I said. "She will hold it unless it needs to be held differently." He stared at the envelope, then at me. What if I want to come Saturday mornings and fix the leak? Even if it's holding now. I could learn the basement. The shelves Dad sketched. "The basement is dark," I said. "Bring a light." He exhaled. "And if Lena doesn't like that?" "Then she builds her own shelves somewhere else," I answered. "I won't argue with another woman for a son who won't pick up a hammer." He reached for the envelope, finally. His hand paused above it. "I'll earn it," he said. "Good," I replied. "Because this door will only open once." He slid the envelope into his jacket. On the threshold, he turned back, eyes searching the room like it could tutor him. "What do I say to Dad when I stand by the photos?" "Say Rule 4 out loud," I told him, "and mean it." He left quietly, the way people do when they mean to come back better. After he was gone, I opened the blue folder and added one more slip to the spine. Private apology requested. 6:04 p.m. The house didn't clap. It breathed. And somewhere under the kitchen floor, the pipes settled, like they'd understood him. On Sunday, the church bells counted 9, and the neighborhood counted pies. Bake sale, folding tables under the maple tree that drops leaves like gold coins in October. I carried 2 loaves of lemon bread, one for the table, one for the women who have kept my ribs standing through the thin years. Mrs. Alvarez waved me over. "There he is," she whispered, nodding to the sidewalk. Daniel had come alone, a paper bag under his arm and a stiffness in his walk that looked like humility, wearing a new suit. He didn't speak to me first. He went to Mrs. Alvarez. "Ma'am," he said, "I came to apologize for the noise, for any disrespect. I made changes in my mother's house without her consent. It won't happen again." His voice carried just enough to be heard by the people who needed to. No theater, just volume honest enough for air. She patted his arm. "Thank you, Danny," she said, using the name his father liked. "You're a good boy. Be a better man." He nodded. Then he turned toward the pastor, toward the card table where our community collects items for the mutual aid fund. Light bills go there when they need a ladder. He set the paper bag down. Inside, a check. He looked at me, then back at the table. "For the fund," he said, loud enough. "From me, not from Mom." The pastor read the amount, blinked, and cleared his throat. "Generous," he said. "Anonymous, if you prefer." "Not anonymous," Daniel answered. "Public, so the lesson fits." He glanced at me. I took. This is a start of putback. I didn't smile. I let the room of faces receive it, a small weather change. Public is where harm echoed. Public is where a hinge can be oiled. Lena arrived a half hour later, late on purpose. She wore a dress that commanded angles and carried a tin of cookies like peace wrapped in sugar. She saw Daniel by the table and came to my side instead. "Harriet," she began, with that careful tone women use when they're choosing between bridges and matches, "I've been upset." "Upset is a room," I said. "You can leave it." She blinked. "I thought you'd be softer." "I am," I replied. "Softer than a slammed door. Harder than a doorknob you didn't buy." She exhaled, then tried again. "We found a place. Month to month. Small. The light is honest." She laughed once, brittle and human. "I told Daniel home isn't square footage. It's how you behave inside the footage you have." I nodded. "That will do." The pastor tapped the microphone on the table. "Neighbors," he said, "a quick announcement before we cut the pies." He lifted the mutual aid ledger. A young family had their power nearly shut off last month. The fund covered it. Today, a donation replenished what was spent. He didn't say Daniel's name. He didn't have to. People's eyes know arithmetic. Kyle from Brightstone walked up then. I hadn't expected him. He held a white envelope with a company letterhead and gilt pressed neatly into the corners. "Ms. Morgan," he said, "we mailed this, but I wanted to say it in person. I didn't confirm ownership properly. My supervisor—" He hesitated, softer. "I'm sorry." I took the envelope, nodded once, and spoke so those who dabble in shortcuts could hear. "Consent is not a box you check after the fact," I said. "It's where you start." He flushed, thanked me, and left with his apology attached to him like a name tag. Daniel drifted to my side. "I told my manager I tried to add my name to your account," he said. "I thought honesty might cost me the promotion. It didn't. It delayed it." He smiled, small and clean. "Fair consequence." "Good," I said. "Consequences are the only tutors that don't flatter." He held out something in his palm, not the fourth key. A receipt from the hardware store. Gutter sealant, patching compound, sandpaper, 12 screws, 1 drop cloth. Dated today. He tapped the total. "I was thinking Saturdays," he said. "Basement first, then the back room." He looked toward the church roof. "If you'll have me." "A home is a verb," I replied. "I'm not hiring, I'm welcoming." The sun tilted, shadows lengthened, and someone cut the pies. Lemon, apple, pecan, justice in slices, not swords. A few women hugged me with that firm, older woman grip that says we know. Children ran past with frosting on their lips, unbothered by adult contrition. The air smelled like cinnamon and second chances. When it was done, I packed my tin and my tiredness. Daniel carried the table back to the storage closet without being asked. Lena stacked chairs in quiet penance. On the walk home, he kept pace with me like he remembers how to. We didn't talk much. The maple leaves had started to fall for real now, little golden receipts drifting down, each one proof that seasons keep their agreements. At my gate, he paused. Saturday? He asked. Bring work clothes, I said, not unkind. The basement keeps score. He smiled. We parted. In the hallway, I touched the doorframe with my fingers, the way some people cross themselves. The house felt taller, not triumphant. That's for children, just steady. And as I set the white envelope from Brightstone in the blue folder and turned off the kitchen light, I let the darkness close, like a book that knows exactly where you stopped. Tomorrow, we'd start in the basement, and I would see if the boy could learn to hold a beam without leaning on it. Saturday arrived with that good workman's light, the kind that doesn't flatter dust, only shows it. Daniel came at 8:02 a.m. in jeans and the high school sweatshirt he used to outgrow daily. He carried a toolbox and a paper envelope that had the stiff dignity of bank tellers. He didn't ask for coffee. He asked for the basement. We went down the narrow stairs that Thomas stained himself the year the furnace coughed, like a lifelong smoker. The air had the familiar mix: metal, old paint, a hint of damp that tells the truth before the rain does. Daniel stood there a moment, eyes adjusting. Then he opened the envelope and placed it on the workbench. Ledger reconciliation, he said, low. Inside, a cashier's check for $2,450, 7 months of the $350 he never paid. 2 smaller checks stapled behind, $421.19 and $128.54. The groceries and gas I'd covered, a third for $213.90, the power bill due on the 20th. A final slip, 63/47 for the almond milk and imported coffee I never drank. Each one labeled, initialed, paper patient, pen honest. Where did the money come from, I asked, not to pry, but to mark the cost. He looked at his hands. I returned a few things that shouldn't have been bought yet, sold a watch I didn't need, canceled the vacation we hadn't earned. A pause. Lena is staying with her mother for a week. To think. Consequences have their own accents. This one spoke fluent grown-up. He set the checkbook aside, then lifted the drop cloth from the old shelves Thomas never finished. Where do I start? He asked. I pointed to the crack along the joist by the back room line. With what holds? We measured, sanded, sistered a beam with careful screws sunk flush. 12. Exactly as the receipt promised. The rhythm found us. Measure, cut, hold, fasten. Memory in our knuckles, instruction in the grain. Halfway through, he sliced the pad of his thumb on a stubborn nail. He didn't curse. He pressed the wound to his sweatshirt, breathed, and said, "That'll teach me." I handed him a bandage and watched him learn the house the way you learn a person you hurt. Slowly. When the beam sat snug, he leaned on it a little, then less, then not at all. It held. "Go check the back room," he said, sweat shining his temple. I went up, stood under the stain, and listened. No drip, no warning. Just silence, content with itself. I came back down and found him near the workbench, holding something that wasn't his. The cedar box. "I took it," he said before I could speak. His voice was the exact size of regret. The night we changed the knob. I told myself I was keeping it safe. I kept it in the trunk so you wouldn't make a scene. He blinked hard. I made my own. He set the box down and stepped back like it had heat. I opened it. Inside, everything tuned to the key of Thomas. The folded warranty for the roof he replaced in 2001. The photo of 10-year-old Danny on the ladder, a copy I didn't know we had, and a florist's card from a spring he forgot to say sorry until he did. It read, "I keep learning. Thank you for letting me. T." I closed the lid and pressed my palm to the wood. "This," I said, "was never a trophy." He nodded. "I know that now. We cleaned up in the quiet you earn." As he put the tools away, I slid the cashier's checks into the blue folder and wrote a line beneath them. Debt addressed, cost acknowledged. At the base of the stairs, Daniel stopped. "Mom," he said, "am I the villain in this house?" I thought about villains, how they like spotlights, how they learn nothing from books that aren't about them. I looked at the beam we'd sistered to strength. "No," I said, "you were a boy with a doorknob he didn't deserve. Today you were a man with a wrench who did the job." I wiped a streak of sawdust from his cheek like he was 16 again. "Keep choosing the beam." He exhaled, something loosening. He reached for the rail, then withdrew his hand and let his balance do the work. Upstairs, the morning had turned to noon with no drama at all. The house, for once, didn't need to testify. It just stood. We ate lunch at the kitchen table that has known more verdicts than arguments. 2 bowls of soup, 2 slices of bread, a silence that had met the gym and come back stronger. Daniel glanced toward the hallway. "Does the small room still leak?" he asked. "Not today," I said. "Rooms behave when people do." He smiled, tired. Then he placed a small object on the tablecloth, his copy of the front door key. He'd taped a note to it. "Saturdays, 8 to 12, repairs, with permission." He pushed it across to me. "Keep it," I said, pushing it back. "But call first, only Saturdays, and never for rooms that aren't yours." He tucked the key away like a promise with a calendar. Deal. We went to the hallway. My bedroom door waited, original brass knob back in place. He had reinstalled it while I was upstairs washing the mugs, the towel-wrapped imposter resting in the trash like a lesson. "I didn't scratch the plate," he said. "Used the right screwdriver. Dad would have laughed at how long it took." "Your father laughed at everything that finally fit," I said. He slid his hand across the wood grain he once threatened. "I get it now," he murmured. "Why the light matters. It's not the light. It's what it touched all those mornings." We stood there a moment, the way people do in museums when a painting starts to move something you can't hang. At the door to the back room, I'd taped a new list, written in my neatest hand. House rules, revised. 1. Speak gentle, even when wrong. Especially then. 2. Put it back. Furniture, keys, trust. 3. Pay your part. Money is a language, speak it on time. 4. Take care of Mom when he can't. He didn't say if, he said when. 5. No guests of guests deciding. Clipboards ask me first. 6. Basement first. Fix before you talk about bedrooms. He read them all the way through, like a spell. Rule 5, he said, a half smile. No clipboards. No clipboards, I echoed. Consent first and last. He cleared his throat. Lena texted. She wants to come by next week to apologize. She says she thought the room would be generosity. She didn't understand it was history. History, I said, is generous when you don't try to own it. I considered the woman who brought vanilla sugar into my cedar room. She can come. She brings nothing but herself. We'll see if that's enough. He nodded, grateful that the bridge still stood. On his way out, he paused by the photo of 10-year-old Danny on the ladder. He touched the frame with caution, like an altar not built for him. Rule 4, he said softly, and this time I heard him mean it. After he left, I opened the bedroom curtains wide. The morning light, no longer a battleground, came in like it had been waiting for an apology it could warm. I changed the sheets, not because any harm had touched them now, but because fresh linen is how you tell a bed it survived. I placed the cedar box back on the dresser, its corners finding the exact shadow they'd kept for years. At the kitchen table, I wrote 3 letters in one sitting. To Brightstone, acknowledgement of their apology, and a note that I won't be taking legal action. My justice had found its proper size. To the power company, thanks for the flag and a request to keep it for a year. To Quicklift, praise for the foreman's professionalism and a check for $85. 1 hour to compensate the morning they waited on my porch while I was busy learning a boundary. When I sealed each envelope, I thought about the word home, how for months it had begun to sound like a dare. Now it sounded like what Thomas said 2 decades ago when he fixed the gutter and came in with his hands cold and proud. A home is what you repair, not what you claim. I stood at the sink, rinsed 2 bowls, and listened. The pipes sang their ordinary song. No drip in the back room, no raised voices, just the steady metronome of a house returned to time. At my age, I don't shout, I choose. Today, I chose a boundary that loved us both. A week later, Saturday arrived soft as bread. I set out a small list on the counter. Basement, oil hinges, label boxes, replace bulb over bench, and brewed coffee that remembered Thomas. At 8:07 a.m., Daniel knocked. Not rang, knocked. 3 steady taps, the way people do when they know a house has ears. He came in with paint on his knuckles and humility that finally fit. Where do I start? He asked. Labels, I said, handing him the marker. Names first, then fixes. We worked in a rhythm that forgives, not forgets. He wrote in tidy block letters, plumbing, electrical, winter, and I tucked each box where the shelf understood its weight. We replaced the buzzing bulb. The basement brightened a notch, like truth turned up one click. At 10, Lena arrived with empty hands and a full apology. "I tried to arrange your house like a hotel," she said, voice unarmored. "I confused comfort with conquest. I'm sorry. No defense, no pearls. Just weather after the storm has cleaned itself." I nodded. "Thank you for coming without a casserole," I said. It made her laugh. A good sign. She asked where to help. I pointed to the back room. Window putty, small work, important work. She went. By noon, the list was done. We stood in the kitchen with 3 cups and the quiet pride that follows labor. On the table lay a small wrapped box I'd kept tucked away for the day. The house and the boy could hold it. I pushed it toward Daniel. He frowned. "What's this?" "Something that knows how to wait." He opened the lid and lifted out a simple engraved plate. Brass, warm, the size of a playing card. The words were Thomas's, stolen from a memory and set in metal. "A home is what you repair, not what you claim." T beneath it, 4 tiny screws and a folded index card that read, "Place it where the light is honest." He swallowed. "Where should it go?" "You decide," I said, "if you understand it." He walked the hallway alone, plate in hand, pausing at thresholds he'd once treated like gates. He stopped at the basement door, then moved on. He stood in the back room under the newly quiet ceiling. He looked toward my bedroom, the morning light laying itself across the floor the way loyal dogs do. And then he stepped to the inside of the front door, the place every hand meets when leaving or returning, and held the plate there, right at eye level. He turned to me, a question without words. I nodded. That's where the house speaks to pride. He set the screws with careful pressure, not stripping one. The plate sat true, catching a bright line from the window. We read it together. The words didn't shout. They stayed. We ate sandwiches over the sink, old habit, humble table, and laughed once about nothing important. When it was time to go, Daniel didn't pocket any keys. He hung his on the hook, tapped the new plate twice, and said, to me and to the door, Saturday, 8 to noon. Then, softer, to the photo above the sideboard, Rule 4, and left with the light at his back. Lena lingered. I'll earn my way to being welcome too, she said, by the dishes I wash and the doors I don't open. That will do, I replied. Evening folded in. I cleaned the counter, set the blue folder on the top shelf like an old witness that can finally rest, and opened my bedroom window to invite the same morning light in early. The house breathed, not victorious, not punished, simply aligned. At my age, I don't shout, I document. But today, I didn't need paper. I had a plate on a door and a son who finally read it. I turned off the kitchen light and the brass caught the last line of sun. It glowed, then dimmed, then waited, like all good instructions do, for the next person to come home and see. If this story gave you strength, help us by sharing, liking, and hitting the notification bell. We'd love to hear in the comments which part of the story you liked most. See you tomorrow.